Aqui agendou a sábado, já vou ter que sair.
Not a problem. So, hey guys, welcome to another Avocado release meeting. This is release 50. This is sprint 52, which will outcome in the release of Avocado 52, which is a different and important release because it's our very second LTS release, long-term stability. For those not yet aware about what LTS means, we have had a bunch of resources posted on a mailing list. They are now also part of our standard documentation. So if you're curious about what LTS means, on the documentation you'll find long-term stability, the terms, how we approach the releases, and this is actually the example we gave when we posted that documentation. We have actually followed the plan, and 52, which is this release, it's going to be LTS. The previous one is 36. And both releases will be maintained for 6 months up to starting from the release of 52, so that will give users the time to actually switch from 36 to 52. So let's take a look at what we did during this sprint. Again, this was a shorter sprint than usual. It was a 2-week sprint. We basically spent time fixing bugs and improving the documentation, the general polish level of Avocado. So you see that reflected in the cards. First one is about execution order, which was not being respected, not working properly on replay jobs. That was fixed. We had documentations on how to switch from LTS 36 to the new LTS, which is 52. This documentation was made in conjunction, so I think it makes sense to mention both of them, to a list of changes that are present on the new LTS, which is 52, compared to 36 LTS. It's quite a long list, including all the new features and changes that users and test writers should be aware of. So please do take a look at that list when the release is made. Actually, since this was already merged, if you take a look at the latest documentation, which tracks the master branch, you're going to find out regular releases and you're going to find out long-term stability releases. And on this, you can see what I just mentioned. So this is a big list of every new feature and changes that users should take a look at from 36 to 52. And following that, all the steps that users should pay attention to when actually switching from the latest minor 36 release, which is 36.4, to 52, which is about to be released. If users find any problems which we have not covered, please do get in touch with us through the mailing list or the IRT channel on OFTC, and we can certainly help with migrations from 36 to 52. Next one was also a bug. So the variant subsystem used to print one set of parameters as a result of Avocado variant system-wide. This was for some time not working as it should, and it has been fixed as well. On the documentation side, we improved the description of how what kind of environment actually a test has when it comes to the process that it is executed on. So every Avocado test is executed on a separate process, and there are some things users should be aware of when it comes to the environment. So file descriptors that are open, signals that are set on behalf of the test process, and some other things like that. Environment variables and things like that. So they're better documented now. Also on the documentation side, we have a section that describes how the pre-post job and the pre-post test plugins are executed, under which error conditions they actually keep executing, or under which circumstances they stop executing. Those are now here on the reference guide under pre and post plugins. So there is a section on what happens before and after jobs, the interfaces that are implemented, what people can expect when they are actually called, and also before and after the execution of tests, general workflow, what happens on error conditions. So plugin writers, they have to deal with what we still consider internal stuff, but they are now at least better documented. One thing that we also considered a bug, which was fixed on this release, was the HTML reports used to be saved as a directory with some assets like cascading style sheets, JavaScript files, and the resulting HTML file, which made reference to those. Also, a few images as well. Some users were reporting problems when actually storing those contents in backends, result backends, such as results.db. So the results would be compressed by default, and by linking to external files, they would not validate the references. So we took a look at that, and it made sense to actually embed those resources, CSS, JavaScript, and other files inside the HTML template, which resulted in the resulting HTML. And Lucas made a valid point about being a bug. We consider this a bug when it comes to usability bug, not really a bug in the code, but some users would face problems when using this feature. So we thought it would make sense to, and strictly we would only include bugs in this release. So maybe we stretched the concept a little bit, but it was a user bug. There was also on the documentation side some improvements when it comes to test references. So yeah, I think, oh yeah, the pull request is here. I thought we had missing the exact pull request. And we have a much better documentation on what the test reference is, how the external loader acts. So thumbs up. We used to have some kind of bad examples in the YAML file, like the files that we use to feed the multiplexer. What happens here is that we have now moved those files because they were really intended to be used on self-tests and not really as examples. And then we had an extra commit, which actually provided pretty nice examples of YAML files. So a complex one that actually includes others, an example of a hardware configuration, with different variations for platforms. So pretty easy to follow, but yet complete, comprehensive example of YAML files. So hopefully this will give users better examples to follow. Next and last one was the documentation for the review process. So we do have a contribution guide, which is pretty comprehensive, but we did not use to list how the code review should be performed. This is now in place, so at least it sets a standard and serves as a reminder for all of us, probably for contributors that don't do that every single day, maybe they could benefit from this, from getting reminded what they should be looking at. So this is what users, this besides a few other pull requests and changes, mostly documentation related, which made its way into the 52 sprint, are what's going to be part of release 52. On the planning side, on the cards that we actually have for this sprint, there is one card which we are still dealing with that will definitely be part of this sprint. A V4 has been posted earlier today, and we are testing and reviewing that pull request. It's about job data and compatibility. Basically, we decided to split a longer pull request that added more types of compatibility with actually more versions of Avocado. And this one is kind of a stripped down version that focuses on LTS to LTS compatibility. So users that created jobs with Avocado 36 should be able to replay those jobs on Avocado 52. We're facing an issue on Travis, so those jobs are failing, but because of job execution timeouts. But anyway, this is the last pending stuff that once merged, we will label and tag the release as 52. So expect this to also be part of 52. Besides that, there is one bug on the Avocado vert side, so it doesn't impact Avocado at all. It's just something that was discovered during the manual self-test for this release, which we also deal with. And finally, there was this card about documentation as well, since we try to document everything. Every painting card that has documentation tasks, we try to tackle them. This one was the last one of them, but during development, I felt that it was kind of a bad API to actually document. So maybe I'll actually send a pull request just so that we decide whether or not we want to public document and encourage this kind of usage. But basically, it's about how some functionality inside Avocado, such as the service manager, can take a function, a run function, to execute some command as a parameter. It uses the default process.run API by default, so it would basically run the given command on the local machine, but it can take a run function as an argument. So you could, in theory, pass a function such as Avocado Runner Remote. If you have that plugin installed, you could import it and then pass that as a execution function. The problem with the API itself is that you cannot run it by itself. You have to create a remote instance, because that is the only interface that it will actually configure the Fabric environment. And the problem that I have with that, besides being a kind of awkward API use, you have to use remote and then you pass run. You cannot pass the run that is actually part of remote. The other problem that I have with this is that suppose you have 2 instances of Service Manager and you want like different executions. You cannot do that on different places because the Fabric environment is a single one, as far as I could test.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a bit like, I'm really thinking about not really like suggesting the use of this kind of functionality, but let's see. I'll send a pull request documenting my findings and we can evolve from that.
So a few comments on that.
Yeah.
I believe the SSH remote code should become its own library. And I'm here. And yeah, and I think Software Manager could use being able to pass an execution function such as the service API. So I think we should work on that concept, and probably but not for this release. Of course, it's something to keep in mind. Having a good remote execution library and general purpose execution API would be nice, and it probably has value outside of the Avocado realm.
Yep. So it's kind of we don't have a separate library in the sense that we advertise how to use that, but it's at least now it is a separate plugin. So
and remoter, and I've already expressed my concerns about the remoter interface because it's using Fabric, which in its turn uses Paramico, and Paramico, almost declaring it's a piece of garbage. So, well, okay. I digress. Yeah, we'll move on. Let's
I actually agree with, like, it's pretty obvious to see the shortcomings when you're dealing with something like this that keeps everything in its like global environment namespace, and you cannot easily switch. And yeah, I see the shortcomings, and I know that when you actually put those to use, you had a lot of problems, and you came up with the SSH like executable based version of
right.
Something like this, right?
Yeah. If any Paramico maintainer or developer is listening to this video, through YouTube, so please, I'm sorry, but yeah, I've had a lot of trouble with Paramico. The key handling is pretty bad, and there's an open bug about it so far. So I'm sorry about the harsh comments, but yeah, it's kind of true.
Right. One thing that I've been looking at, probably not the best time to actually go about it, but one system out there which does a lot of remote execution, it's Ansible, and it seems to have a pretty interesting connection, class, and implementations that maybe we can in the future take a look at making one of our own, or even the one that you wrote. It could become its own library. But it's definitely something that needs to be evolved from the current state that we have. The remote code that we have, it's good enough for remote execution of tests, and that's all. Which is
for a small number of VMs.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Okay, let's keep going. So yeah, I mentioned those two. This one, which is the blocker, and the last two cards. This one is in progress. It's a Avocado VT card, so it doesn't mean much to this meeting. But basically, there's been a review and feedback by some users, and I need to follow up with a V2. And the RFC, the multiple machine support for tests, this is something that I posted a V1 a while back. I'm working on a V2, which I intend to have it paired with a proof of concept, but it was not like delivered on this sprint. It's something that is still in progress. So basically, you guys can get a sense that this sprint was about polishing the 51 release, which was really our initial intention. We did find a few bugs which are scheduled to be fixed on the upcoming release. So the goal of 52 is not to be perfect. So we did find bugs that would introduce so many changes, or like would change enough of Avocado that it's better to keep it as it is, because users were expecting the behavior of 51 on 52. But if we find problems with the state of 52 along the whole time that it's going to be supported, we are going definitely to fix it. So this is more like an incremental improvement of Avocado that's going to happen in every next release. So just taking a quick look of what is going to be Avocado 53. Of course, we have a bunch of pull requests that are marked as post LTS. So contributions that we received later during not later, but during this sprint that were not specifically bug fixes, that we decided to hold them until after the LTS to minimize the changes from 51 to 52. And besides those, we have a number of bugs, which are always ranked at the top because they are more priority. They have a higher priority. And finally, we have a bunch of things that are related to dropping compatibility or things that should be removed after the LTS release. So one example is job data URLs link. Inside the job data, we have a URLs file which points to test references. We can now drop this since we are not going to be compatible with things post LTS. So now is the time to change everything. There are a bunch of comments on our code about fixing, removing things which can be safely removed after LTS. And there are cards that actually go through them, some of them individually, probably because they don't have comments in the code. And one of them is this, which is remove the sim link, which is similar to the job data URLs. Clean up self-test. This is something we attempted to do during this release, but we didn't, so it's part of the next sprint. And this is a recent one. Travis has introduced a 50-minute maximum job runtime. We have dealt with our CI basically all with Travis, and one thing we introduced a while back was to run not only the tests on the head of the branch that we are proposing as a pull request, but on each commit that is part of that. And it usually, when it grows after more than 4 or 5 commits, then we hit this timeout. There are a few possibilities here. One is to drop this test execution in each unique commit, or Amador mentioned that it may be possible to run each test on each commit into a separate Travis job, like on a separate Travis VM. I have no idea how to do that or if there are other solutions, but this is something that we need to evaluate. So any help or ideas here are welcome. One thing that I did myself, but I haven't received any feedback yet, was I've requested resources from CentOS CI because the environment that they described would allow us to do more functional testing, including testing with external components such as Avocado VT and Avocado Vert, because they would give us a real machine. But I haven't received any responses from that, but it looks like we could also hook those as a second type of CI component on GitHub. But anyway, it's an open task. Any other questions, comments? And one last comment is that Sprint 52 looks more or less like just something that has follow-ups of the 50, actually 53 is going to look. It's looking right now as something that only has follow-ups of 52. And the fact behind this is that we are going to focus a little bit our energy on something that is quite exciting, and it's probably going to be really, really beneficial to Avocado. and that is that we are going to use most of our energy for at least the next few sprints on a project to try to deliver a framework inside the QEMU project itself to have more test coverage. So that means we'll focus our energy towards trying to solve QEMU problems. This, of course, means that the tool that we'll probably try to use, if it matches the requirements, is Avocado. So the other cards that will probably come up will be cards that are a reflection or a result of that work.
Is it based on Avocado Vert?
We don't know that yet. So that is one of the things we're about to find out. We have just talked about this direction of focus for the next few sprints. And one of the tasks that we have is actually to evaluate the needs of the QEMU project and how to solve that with Avocado Vert or with something that is more direct, say something called Avocado QEMU, actually quoting Ademar, but it's based on Avocado Vert code or not. So we just don't know what code base to use, but we know the goal that we have. But we are definitely, and that is why we actually spent the last sprint taking a look at at least partially in parallel with LTS, we spent some time taking a look at Avocado Vert cards. I think there were 1 or 2 pull requests merged there. There is this bug fix that we're also going to fix on the bootstrap. So we have been playing with Avocado Vert lately because it was on our radar that we needed to deliver tools to our Vert developers out there. So
so one suggestion would be to look at executing the C-based tests with Avocado improvements, like the logs and stuff. So
right.
that would possibly be useful to them.
Right. So we, based on our very early research, we have identified a couple of like individual subsystems, test subsystems inside Avocado itself. And the idea is just to look at like features that are added to QEMU, bugs that are fixed, but they don't have alongside them a test. And how would a test look like? And what is the best way to write such a test? Is it with plain Avocado? Is it with Avocado Vert or some other kind of tool, and try to come up with a standard way to write such tests and actually take a look at those last features or bug fixes and write tests so they serve as a proof and as example for further testing. But yeah, that's pretty much why the current sprint is kind of shy. It's kind of limited. It's because there are other work coming.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for Avocado project because so far we have been improving Avocado in a direction that we believe that users out there will find useful. And now we have the opportunity to actually dig into a project that has a huge potential to use what we have already in Avocado and also to contribute with further evolutions of the Avocado project. So I think it's it just makes sense to do something like that right now because Avocado is in a very good level for any project, but we have to find ways to make it more like easy to use or more relevant for specific projects, and QEMU will be our playground right now.
Exactly. Maybe different than Lucas. I can say it for myself that I have been just like a developer of Avocado writing, and the interesting thing is that when we are actually writing tests for Avocado, we have been using plain unit test, so that even decreases like how we can test Avocado itself as a developer writing tests, and like Amador said, it's a very, very good opportunity, not only for the project, but for ourselves to actually wear a different hat and look at Avocado as a product that we are going to consume and not as only something that we develop. So I think the requirements that are going to be put on Avocado are, at least for one specific segment, are going to be a lot more realistic and a lot more real world use cases because of that. We have the insights of the framework, and now we're going to have more insights on a very, very mature project, a very interesting project. So it is exciting. It's a probably not a permanent change of focus, but it's a very interesting one. Okay, so we have gone through, I think, everything. The next sprint is going to be obviously 53. We need a new name for it. I'm not sure if we do already have a new name for it. Do we, Amador? I think it's...
No, not yet, but I'll figure that out.
Okay, so we do need to create the new Dawn. So let me share my screen again. And I have to say that I'm just turbo at the usual process. So should I create a new board? So
you create a new list.
Right. So this is going to become 53 without.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be sprint 53 without a name. And then we create a new, add a new list. And this is going to be Dawn
53. And then you archive Dawn 51.
And 51 is going to be archived. Okay. All right.
3 has to be after work in progress, not before.
All right. Exactly. Okay, guys. So this is the last formal part of the meeting. We have a new board. When it comes to the LTS releases, you guys can expect something probably tomorrow. We still have one pull request to validate. And after that, I'll write the release notes. I'll tag the specific release, and as an LTS release, we'll have a new branch which we're going to be maintaining. So we already have 36 LTS branch, and now we're going to have 52 LTS branch. So in theory, a bug fix could be applied to 3 places. Oh, and Lucas is suggesting a name here.
Just an important heads up about this version. This new LTS will be the same way as the last one, supported by around 18 months, but the important time frame that you should take care about is the fact that we are going to support the previous LTS, the 36, for 6 months after the release of this one. So it means that you have this time window of 6 months to migrate between release. If you are using LTS only, we have a lot of documentation helping in that process, making very explicit what you should take care when in regards to the Avocado itself and to the test that you have. I mean, what changed in our test API between versions. So you should take a look at the documentation and bear in mind that we have 6 months of overlap in regards to the supportability of the 2 versions.
Sure.
Exactly. Well put. Okay, guys. So, do we have any other questions, comments? If not, I'll let everyone go and call for the end of the meeting.
That's all for me.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Lucas. Thanks, Amador. Thanks for everyone either watching it now or watching it later. If you have any other comments or questions with the Avocado development or LTS release, please do reach us. And have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye. See you guys later.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.